$4,000 child tax credit to families of 4 earning $400,000 a year. You earn $400,000 a year, you get $4,000 in a child tax credit. But if you're poor, a single mom of two, or a mother of 2 earning only $14,500, guess how much she gets? $75. $75. Today we gather on this floor in the midst of a holy season. In this season, we celebrate the miraculous blessings of God. We reflect on the wondrous joy of children and our responsibility to them. We remember our duty to live justly. And for those of us blessed to serve in this Congress, we must remember our special responsibility to govern fairly, to meet the needs of all of God's children. In this holy time, the moral obscenity and unrepentant greed of the GOP tax scam stands out even more clearly. As the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops said early on, here it is, this proposal appears to be the first federal income tax modification in American history that will raise income taxes on the working poor while simultaneously providing a large tax cut to the wealthy. The bishops go on to say, this is simply unconscionable. They'll be cheering it, unconscionable. This is in sharp contrast to the words of Senator Hatch. Remember what the bishop said. This is Now here, get back to the Republicans. This is in sharp contrast to the words of Senator Hatch. He said, now he's the chairman of the Finance Committee in the United States Senate, an author of this bill. And he said, I have a rough time wanting to spend billions and billions and trillions of dollars to help people who won't help themselves, won't lift a finger and expect the federal government to do everything. How about that? Tell that to the moms we just saw speaking out with their children, children with disabilities, who wonder, how could this be so cruel? This is an act of misery, not according to Senator Hatch. And that's in terms of getting back to our bishops. In his encyclical, God is Love, and I've said this to you before, my colleagues, but with obviously no effect on the Republican side, Pope Benedict quoted the urgent moral wisdom of St. Augustine. 17 centuries ago, my colleagues, 17 centuries ago, St. Augustine said, a state which is not governed according to justice is just a bunch of thieves. Pope Benedict went on to say, the state must inevitably face the question of how justice can be achieved here and now. And he cautioned against, in his words, the danger of certain ethical blindness caused by the dazzling effect of power and special interest. My colleagues, is there justice in a bill that rewards corporations shipping jobs overseas, jobs of hardworking men and American women and veterans shipping those jobs overseas? Is there justice in that? No, I don't think so. Is there justice in a bill that spikes health care premiums and may add 13 million Americans to the ranks of the uninsured? No justice there. Is there justice in a bill that raises taxes on 86 million middle-class families? Here we are. Raises taxes on 86 million middle-class families, and they try to present the delusion that it's a middle-class tax cut. Is there justice in a bill that hands a breathtaking 83% of its benefits to the wealthiest 1% of Americans? 83% of its benefits to the top 1%. Is there justice in a bill that explodes the national debt to give the wealthy and the well-connected a break and sticks the debt with our children? Is that justice? I didn't think you thought so. I wish our Republican colleagues would join us. This GOP tax scam is simply theft, monumental, brazen theft from the American middle class and from every person who aspires to reach it. The GOP tax scam is not a vote for an investment in growth or jobs. It is a vote to install a permanent plutocracy in our nation. They'll be cheering that later. It does violence to the vision of our founders. It disrespects the sacrifice of our men and women in uniform, who are a large part of our middle class and to whom we owe a future worthy of their sacrifice. And it betrays the future and betrays the aspirations of our children. It morally demands a no vote from every member of this House of the people. With that, I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman from Texas.
Mr. Speaker, I'm very proud. Yield 1 minute. The gentleman from California, Mr. McClintock.
Gentleman from California is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, I opposed the original House bill because it severely limited or abolished broad-based deductions, resulting in higher taxes for many families in high-tax, high-cost states like California. Thanks to Chairman Brady's leadership, this bill has largely addressed these objections, and in commendation with much lower rates, it assures that nearly every California taxpayer will pay lower taxes. More important still is the higher wages and better jobs it means for all Americans. Last Friday, I toured a local company that makes the active ingredient for certain drugs. Yet the actual medicine is not produced here. It's produced in Ireland because
the chair has detected a disturbance in the gallery in contravention of the law and against the rules of the House. The Sergeant at Arms will identify the person or persons responsible and have them escorted from the House chamber. House will be in order. Gentleman from California is recognized for his remaining 20 seconds.
Mr. Speaker, I was saying that the actual medicine, the ingredients produced here, but the actual medicine is produced in Ireland solely because of our uncompetitive corporate tax. Because of this tax reform, the company plans to grow dramatically here at home, employing hundreds of new workers. That's what the Democrats mean by tax breaks for the wealthy. The proof of these policies will come over the next year, and every American will be able to decide for themselves if they're better off because of it. I'm now highly confident their answer is going to be a resounding yes.
Gentleman from Massachusetts.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to inquire as to how much time is remaining.
Gentleman from Massachusetts has 4 3/4 minutes remaining.
I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman's time is reserved. Gentleman from Texas.
Myself 4 minutes, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman from Texas is recognized for 4 minutes.
There's only one fundamental question today. Who gets to decide? When Americans work hard for their money, who gets to decide what you do with it? Is it you, or is it some nameless face of government worker here in Washington? When a family with young children, is working feverishly to fund their kids' future, who gets to decide how they spend their money? Them or Washington? The single mom fighting every day, trying to get by and give a good life to her daughter, who decrees where her money goes? When a Main Street business owner, when they work late into the night and through the weekend, risking every penny they own to reach their dream, who gets that meager profit each day? Does it go to you, who earned it, exhausted at the end of a long day, or is it grabbed by a federal government who doesn't even know your name, except on April 15th? Our communities have watched their companies, jobs, and futures move overseas for too long. Our local businesses They've been fighting other countries with one hand tied behind their back from an old, outdated tax code. They deserve a new tax code that allows them to compete and win anywhere in the world, especially here at home. And when they compete and win, who decides where that money goes? Today, Washington says spend it overseas. Our new tax code says bring it home. Spend it here in America to grow our jobs, our paychecks, our communities. That's why this moment is so important. Opponents of this tax bill, they don't really worry about tax cuts for the rich. They worry about tax cuts for you. Because if you spend your money, they can't. If you have the first claim over your earnings, they no longer do. And if your dreams come before theirs, everything in Washington changes. Everything. Given a choice between the federal government and you, we choose you. Hardworking American taxpayers. We choose you, the only special interest that truly matters. Americans deserve a tax code for a new era of American prosperity. We deliver on that promise because it's your money. Speaker, I yield back. In reserve.
Reminded to address their remarks to the chair, and Clint Usich is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield myself the balance of our time.
Gentleman is recognized.
So in 1 month, we have taken the entire revenue system of the country without one public hearing, without any witness testimony, without the solicitation of one expert. We, meaning the Republican majority, they've decided to go forward with this reckless plan. Contrast this with Reagan and O'Neill and Rostenkowski and Packwood in 1986. When Gephardt and Bradley first offered their bill in 1982 on tax reform, 4 years ensued before the measure came to the floor for passage, and in that time, 450 witnesses offered testimony. Every expert from every nook and cranny in America was invited to offer their vision of what a better tax system might look like. And to those individuals, and I knew them all because I went to the committee when Mr. Rostenkowski was the chairman, they saw that as the fabled achievement of their time in a bipartisan manner. And you know what else? Secretary Reagan and Chief of Staff Jim Baker sat through the markups on that tax reform measure. Now, Secretary Mnuchin instead has said, nobody at the top will get a tax cut. And then they cut the rate from 39.6 at the top to 37. Well, nobody at the top will get a tax cut. We're going to double the exemption on the estate tax so that you might now keep $22 million rather than $11 million without any formalization of taxation. And my friend, Mr. Brady, and he is my friend, he spoke before about the people's money. Well, you know what the people's responsibility is? 1 million new veterans from Iraq and Afghanistan. That's the people's responsibility. When we talk about responsibility and the people's money, Medicare is the people's responsibility. Social Security is the people's responsibility. Medicaid today, as we celebrate the extension of life expectancy in America, Medicaid now cares for people with dementia and Alzheimer's disease. That's the people's responsibility. They have carefully taken theology and wed it to science fiction. Remember what we heard around here all of these years? Don't worry, tax cuts pay for themselves. That was the offering in 2001, $1.3 trillion worth of tax cuts. Well, we get to 2003, another $1 trillion worth of tax cuts. And by the way, there was time in between for a repatriation holiday at 5.25, all advertised on the basis of job creation. And layoffs ensued almost the next day. This money is going to be used for stock buybacks and dividends. There will be little investment in this last opportunity where we should have invested in community colleges and vocational education. and apprenticeship programs. 6 million jobs in America go unanswered every single day because of a skills alignment problem, and also the horror of what opiate addiction has done across the United States and has sidelined 2 million people. So what they're telling us today is the following. We've got tax simplification. What happened to the postcard? As I said earlier, we're going to have to carry around a billboard for tax simplification to figure out what's in it. They keep talking about phase-ins and phase-outs. I'm telling you, we'll all be passed out by the time they get done with this. This is more complexity. And wait till people have a chance over the next few weeks to sort what's in this bill. But here's something you might give some thought to. The bottom quintile, you're going to get $60 a year. The second quintile, you're going to get $380 a year. The top 1%, they're going to get $51,000 a year. And the top 0.1%, they're going to get $193,000 a year, all in the name of middle-class tax relief. So, as we proceed to the holiday, they're telling us this is their Christmas present. And you know what they're doing with it? It's going to be Christmas hangover debt, and they're putting it on the credit card and adding $2.3 trillion to the federal debt. Merry Christmas.
Gentleman from Texas.
Mr. Speaker, I'm proud to yield 1 minute to a gentleman who has devoted his life to this moment in tax reform. Our Speaker of the House, gentleman from Wisconsin, Mr. Ryan.
Gentleman from Wisconsin. The Speaker. The Speaker of the House is recognized for 1 minute.
I appreciate the gentleman. First, I want to start off by thanking all of the members and the staff of the Ways and Means Committee for all of their hard work in putting this bill together. I want to thank them for this. I want to personally thank one of my predecessors from the Ways and Means Committee who helped lay the foundation to get us to where we are today, and that is Dave Camp. Dave Camp did a lot to help us get to where we are. I want to, most of all, commend and express my profound admiration to the architect of this measure, Chairman Kevin Brady. His endless patience and his persistence and his great demeanor have seen this through and gotten us to where we are today. My colleagues, this is a day I've been looking forward to for a long time. We are about to achieve some really big things. Things that the cynics have scoffed at for years, decades even. Ideas that have been worked on for so long to help hardworking Americans who have been left behind for too long. Today, we are giving the people of this country their money back. This is their money after all. Mr. Chairman, or Speaker of the House is not in order.
The chair notes a contravention of the law and against the rules of the House. The Sergeant at Arms will identify the person or persons responsible and have them escorted from the House chamber before proceedings will resume. The chair will also remind all persons in the gallery that they are here as guests of the House and that any manifestation of approval or disapproval of the proceedings in the House are in violation of the rules of the House. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Wisconsin, the Speaker of the House.
I'd simply like to remind my colleagues in the Speaker that my minute can last for as long as I want it to last. I'm just saying. As I was saying, Mr. Speaker, today we are giving the people their money back. The bottom line here is the typical family making the median income in America will get a $2,059 tax cut next year alone. What this is real relief for families who are living out their paycheck to paycheck, struggling to make ends meet. You know, they hear about the economy getting better. They turn on the TV and they see the stock market going up. But now we need to make sure that these people in our communities, in our country who are struggling, see their own personal economy getting better. And that's what this is all about. We got to understand that times are tough for a lot of people in this country right now. Today, this is about how much better things can be. This is about more jobs, fairer taxes. It is about bigger paychecks. It's about faster growth and upward mobility. It's about a strong economy that makes all of us stronger and healthier. Those are the effects. Those are the benefits of tax reform. Here is the heart of it. And here is why this is so vital that we do this. Here is what it speaks to and what I truly believe is a generational defining moment for this nation. Our tax code is so broken that it undermines the very thing that makes our nation exceptional in the first place. It punishes hard work. It discourages our entrepreneurial spirit. It dims freedom and free enterprise. It limits our potential of our own people. When Americans see good jobs going away, when Americans wake up and they see the companies that they grew up with in their communities going away, they wonder if we have lost something bigger. The mission that drives us here today is to restore this beautiful American idea. What is that idea? That the condition of your birth does not determine the outcome of your life. You can work hard, play by the rules, get ahead, and make a better life for yourselves and an even better one for your kids. It is that sense of possibility. We want people to be free to strive and to make the most of their lives. We want a country with the resilience to endure and tackle all of its challenges. Mr. Speaker, economic growth and job creation will not solve all of our problems, but it will help make all of our problems much easier to solve. This is the direction that we are choosing here today, because we know exactly where the status quo leads us. For years, the powers that be have blocked and stonewalled reform under the umbrella of an arrogant, condescending, and paternalistic ideology. An ideology that seeks to limit mobility, to limit aspirations, to accept less in our lives. It's a view of the world that sees life and the economy as a zero-sum game. Your gain comes at my loss, therefore we can't do it. Look at where this got us. The worst recovery since World War II, flat wages, and an economy just limping along. Stagnation is a breeding ground for a class-based society where elites predetermine the outcome of our lives. That is not the American idea. They will tell you this: just hand over more freedom to the unelected bureaucrats and they'll figure it out. They know more. We'll all just be okay. Hand over more of your hard-earned dollars to the IRS and it will all be okay. There's your scam right there. We know, given the opportunity, there are no limits to what our people, our fellow citizens, our brothers and sisters can do. Yet for years now, this tax code has been skewed to the well-connected, full of special interest carve-outs and loopholes. Meanwhile, the hard-working family in America has got to jump through all the hoops that the IRS can muster. Reform means we bring rates down at every level. We clear out these loopholes so that people can just keep more of what they earn in the first place because it's their money in the first place. No special favors, just basic fairness. Reform means simplification too. Nearly 9 out of 10 Americans will still be able to do their taxes on the form the size of a postcard. That is amazing. And given the opportunity, there are no limits to what our workers and our entrepreneurs can do. Yet while the world has changed, while the world's become more competitive, closer, smaller, our tax code has not. Instead of leading, we've been falling behind, to the point where we now are the worst in the industrialized world at how we tax our businesses. We tax our businesses a whole lot more than our foreign competitors tax theirs. They win, we lose. That's not fair. It is basically open season for our competitors to come in and take our jobs overseas under the current tax code. Reform means we go from the back of the pack to the front of the pack. So instead of the slow growth that we've been slogging through for years, we want to get back to real sustained economic growth. We want to build an opportunity economy where there is more demand for higher paying jobs. That's the whole purpose of all of this. Make sure that people can grow up and reach their potential. Make sure that the jobs are there to give people the careers they want so they can reach their potential, so their families can reach their potential. That's why we're doing this. This is without question the single most important thing we can do to once again make America the best place to do business. You know, there's more just than that in this bill. With this bill, we're finally restoring the freedom to make your own health care choices. By repealing the individual mandate at the heart of Obamacare, we are giving back the freedom and the flexibility to buy the health care that's right for you and your family. And finally, we are doing something truly to put America in the lead. We are doing something historic to develop our own energy resources. Some people have been working here since I was in the second grade on this project. After decades and decades in this chamber, we're opening up a small, non-wilderness area of the Alaska National Wildlife Refuge for responsible development. It is the most ambitious step we have taken in years to secure our own energy future. This is one of those times to just take a step back. Let's just take a minute, collect ourselves, and step away from the noise. We talk a lot in these jobs about turning points. There is no doubt that we are at one of those turning points right now. And this one will determine the kind of country we're going to have this century. But too often we have seen before how doubt creeps in, how the tyranny of short-term thinking takes over, and history fails to turn. There is, after all, a reason that this has not been done in 31 years. This really is a generational defining moment. And let's let this generational defining moment be defined by optimism, not by fear. By the rising aspirations of our people and not the doom and gloom of managed decline that we have become too familiar with. This is our chance. This is our moment. Let's turn at this turning point. Let's reclaim the principles that have guided us for generations. Let's recapture our destiny for generations to come, so this beautiful story of the American idea is repeated and passed on to the next generation. A nation more united, more confident, more prosperous, and, Mr. Speaker, more free. Pass this bill. I yield.
Gentleman from Texas with 2 minutes to close.
Mr. Speaker, let's pass this bill. I yield back all remaining time.
All time for debate has expired. Pursuant to House Resolution 667, the previous question is ordered. For what does the gentleman from Massachusetts seek recognition?
I ask for the yeas and nays.
Gentlemen have a motion.
I do. I have a motion to recommit at the desk.
Is the gentleman opposed to the conference report?
I certainly am.
Gentleman qualifies. The clerk will report the motion.
Mr. Dale, Massachusetts moves to recommit the conference report on the bill H.R. 1 to the Committee of Conference with instructions to the managers on the part of the House to disagree to Section 1.1.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to dispense with the reading.
Without objection, the previous question is ordered on the motion to recommit. The motion is not debatable. The question is on the motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The noes have it. The motion is not agreed to. Gentlemen from
I ask for the yeas and
Massachusetts. Nays are requested. Those favoring a vote by the yeas and nays will rise. Sufficient number having risen, the yeas and nays are ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device pursuant to Clause 8 and Clause 9 of Rule 20. This 15-minute vote on the motion to recommit will be followed by 5-minute votes on adoption of the conference report, if ordered, and suspending the rules and passing H.R. 4323. This is a 15-minute vote. Against the rules of the House. On this vote, the yeas are 191, the nays are 236. The motion is not adopted. The question is on adoption of the conference report. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. Gentleman from Massachusetts.
I ask for the yeas and nays.
The yeas and nays are requested. Those favoring a vote by the yeas and nays will rise. Sufficient number having risen, the yeas and nays are ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This is a 5-minute vote.
On this vote, the yeas are 227 and the nays are 203. The conference report is adopted without objection. The motion to reconsider is laid upon the table. Finished business is on the vote of the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Dunn, to suspend the rules and pass H.R. 4323 as amended, on which the yeas and nays are ordered. The clerk will report the title of the bill.
H.R. 4323, a bill to promote veteran involvement in STEM education, computer science, and scientific research, and further purposes.
The question is, will the House suspend the rules and pass the bill as amended? Members will record their votes by electronic device. This is a 5-minute vote.
They're actually coming from this side and they're coming directly towards us. They're going around the back and grouping in Pelosi's office and then coming straight towards us as a group. In order for them, yes, we should be, yes. Yes. So the group of 5 will then walk straight towards us. That's the plan. Well, it's and Grady.
I understand if you heard me. I'm asking, are you going to be fine over there?
Attention stations, this is ABC News. On Live Channel 1, we have the already in progress media availability with senators outside of the Senate Policy Luncheon. This is a pool camera on Live 1.
mired in the mid to upper 30s despite those accomplishments?
I think oftentimes because while the president and this administration has been very focused on how we can better help the American people, I think oftentimes the media is focused on other things, certainly not talking about the growing economy, certainly not talking about the crushing of ISIS, not talking about the creation of jobs. If you look at the amount of time that is spent on negative coverage of this president, 90% of the coverage is negative about this president when, as you just said, I listed off a number of things that have been pretty historic in nature in this first year. And if people were focused a lot more on those things in the media, I think that his numbers would be a lot higher. We anticipate that they're going to go up as more and more of these things continue to happen, and particularly as more and more people start to feel the impact of the booming economy, the tax cuts that will take place later tonight and go into effect in the first part of February. I think those are all things that are going to help boom our numbers.
And separately, Sarah, just if I may, Matthew Peterson, since we last met, withdrew his judicial nomination. There's been a viral video of his inability to answer some basic legal questions when he went up before his confirmation hearing. How did he sort of slip through the cracks? Why was he nominated? And are you doubling up your effort here at the White House, over at DOJ, to make sure that your judicial nominees can answer those basic questions when they go up to the confirmation hearings?
Look, the president's judicial selection process has led to a historic pace of confirmations, including 12 circuit court justices and a Supreme Court justice. Every administration has individuals that don't go all the way through the process. We've had 60 nominees and only 3 that haven't gone through this process. That individual has withdrawn, and we're going to make sure that we fill that spot with a really strong and good qualified candidate. Dave?
Thanks. Where was the president watching when the House voted, and did you see his reaction? What did he do?
I'm not sure. I'll have to circle back with you on that. I was getting ready to come out. I was watching to make sure I didn't make you guys wait too much longer.
One thing on nominations. Can you explain, now that we're near the end of the year, why the president has submitted far fewer names to the Senate for nomination than his predecessors at this point in this term?
Look, we've been focused on filling positions as quickly as possible, but at the same time, the president has said before he doesn't think that every single position in the government needs to be filled. He's going to cut back on some of those positions. We've been focused on some of the top priority places, and we're going to continue filling out individuals. But we've also seen a massive slowdown and obstruction by the Democrats. Hopefully they'll continue to push our people through, particularly in individuals that were held up, whether it's in the judiciary or something that falls under the national defense profile. Blake?
Thank you. Let me ask you a couple questions, pick up where John Roberts left off. He asked you about the carried interest loophole. You said essentially that it fell within the president's forming principles that he laid out. How is keeping the carried interest loophole, or at least a portion of it, good for the middle class?
Look, the big priorities that we had, I'll go back, were make it easy, make it fair, win again, and bring it home. We feel like this tax legislation certainly does that. There were provisions that were put in place that directly help and benefit the middle class. They see more of their money come home. They see child care tax deductions double. There are a lot of things that are going to impact the middle class, and we feel like those things address the need to really help give them that boost, and we think that this absolutely will.
Let me ask you this way. An individual who makes roughly $83,000 would pay about 24% with their rate. Somebody who benefits a millionaire, tens of millions, potentially hundreds of millions, if not more, still might pay 24% on that money. Does the White House believe that somebody who makes $83,000 paying as somebody who's potentially hundreds of millions, do you guys believe that is fair?
Look, again, I'm not going to get into a back and forth on a detailed hypothetical situation that I don't have in front of me and that I can't quickly do the math on, but I can tell you we feel like this plan fully addresses helping the middle class, giving the majority of middle class Americans more of their money back, and that's what we've been focused on, and we feel confident in that. Jordan?
Thanks, Sarah. I actually want to ask about UFOs. Several media reports this week disclosed
I was going to say, I don't know if that's a coincidence or not. I feel like I already want to pass on this question, given that you've got aliens sitting among you.
Several media reports disclosed the existence of a secret Pentagon program that was researching UFOs. Funding ran out for that in 2012. Does the president believe in the existence of UFOs, and would he be interested in restoring funding for that program?
Somehow that question hasn't come up in our back and forth over the last couple days, but I will check into that and be happy to circle back. Jennifer?
Has the president made sure that the IRS has the resources it needs to implement these new tax reform rules?
We understand that they're fully prepared to take action immediately, and that people will see the benefits of this tax package start at the first part of February. And we've confirmed that with the IRS. Major?
To follow up on a couple of questions, were you saying that this particular judicial nominee who's withdrawn after this viral video of his inept performance at the confirmation hearing didn't properly go through your preparation and vetting process?
No, I didn't say that. I said that we have been focused on pushing forward good candidates. We've put forward over 60 nominees. We've had 3 individuals that have had to withdraw. That individual was one of them. And we are focused on making sure we fill that position with somebody that would...
Based on your process, you thought he was prepared?
We, again, are looking always for the best and brightest, and when we felt like that wasn't necessarily the right person for that position, he has withdrawn his nomination. We haven't continued to go forward. That is pretty standard in most administrations. In fact, every administration prior to us has had to withdraw nominees. We've had to withdraw 3 out of 60. Look, I think a lot of people are focused on just those 3 and not at the overwhelming number. The president has had his nominees confirmed at a historic pace on that effort, and many of them with bipartisan support, including the 12 members of the Circuit Court and the Supreme Court Justice.
That's a serious question. You don't disagree with what she said about the personal benefits that will accrue to the president based on provisions in the tax cut bill?
I said that we expect
they will benefit him personally.
Look, I said that in some ways, particularly on the personal side, the president will likely take a big hit. But on the business side, he could benefit. But the biggest focus for this White House has been to make sure all Americans are better off today after this tax package passes than they were beforehand. We really focused on invigorating the middle class and making sure they got more of their hard-earned money, and we think that that'll happen in this package. No.
Sarah, you said the focus is on the middle class. Why was one of the last provisions put in lowering the top bracket, and did the president support that? And why did he, if he did not support it, why did he not insist that that not be added at the end?
Look, some of the back and forth, we respected the process. A lot of that took place in the House and Senate. We've been engaged in that process, but we laid out what our 4 priorities were. We wanted to make sure those happened. That was our focus in the process, and we felt like those priorities were met.
Does that help the middle class to lower the rate for the bracket for the top individual earners?
Some economists think that it does, and I'd be happy to refer you to some of them that it would give you a very deep dive and get into a very wonky conversation on it. A lot of people think that that does impact and can help the middle class, and be happy to set you up with those folks later. Peter?
Sarah, what do you say to the millions of Americans who could and likely will end up paying more because the individual mandate is repealed in this tax plan?
We've maintained all along that we think that that is the right step. Look, most Americans want to keep more of their money. This plan does this. Most Americans want to get rid of the special interest loopholes that benefit the rich. This plan does this. They want to simplify the tax code to make it easier for them to file their taxes. This does this. And when you look at the actual elements of the bill in front of the American people, they overwhelmingly support it. By even a lot of Democrats' support has picked up when you look at the elements in the bill.
To be clear, though, on the individual mandate specifically, you will acknowledge that many Americans will end up paying more as a result of it being repealed.
Look, we've said all along that our healthcare system is broken. It has to be fixed. It's not sustainable. This is one step in that process. We're going to continue moving forward and looking at the best ways to improve our healthcare system, and we anticipate that being a big part of our focus next year.
To be clear, so for the time being, they'll have to swallow paying more until that resolution comes.
I don't think that's necessarily the case, and we, again, are committed to fixing the system as a whole and not just looking at one element of it, and this is certainly a big step in the right direction and something that has to happen because the system that we're in right now is simply unsustainable. Jackie?
Sarah, as women around the country continue to speak up about sexual harassment in the workplace, I wanted to check in with you and see if the President and this administration is considering any legislative fixes to protect women from harassment. There are 2 notable bipartisan bills that have recently been introduced. This is Gretchen Carlson's bill to remove arbitration clauses from employee contracts and the Congressional Harassment Reform Act. which would require members of Congress to be found personally liable for harassment settlements and allow victims to speak publicly about their cases. Would the President consider signing either of these bills if they arrived on his desk?
I'd have to talk to him and look at more detailed versions of the legislation. Obviously, we take this very seriously and are always looking for ways to protect all Americans, and especially and including women. Hallie?
Though the White House isn't considering legislation?
I'm not aware of those considerations. I'd have to talk to our legislative affairs team and get back to you on specifics of those details still.
Taxes, but because of the top you mentioned, forgotten men and women, I wanted to ask about Puerto Rico. It's been more than 3 months since the hurricane hit. Would the President still give himself right now a 10 out of 10 for the federal government's response?
Look, the federal government has continued to be engaged. In fact, the Secretary of Homeland Security and the Secretary of HUD are in Puerto Rico today, further engaging in this process, continuing to be partners with the leadership on the ground in Puerto Rico at the state and local level. We've given every time we could from the federal level, and we're going to continue working with them until they're fully restored.
The President feels he's doing everything he can. Still a 10.
We still firmly believe, and I believe you can refer back to the comments that the governor has made previously, that every time they've asked, the federal government has delivered. We want to continue to be partners with them with this and make sure that we rebuild, and that's what we're doing, and that's why the President has sent 2 members of his cabinet directly to deal with that and be on the ground in Puerto Rico to further assess and see what other necessary actions we have that we can take.
This situation, Sarah, you're getting a lot of questions about what will benefit the President, what won't benefit the President. I get that he doesn't want to release his taxes. That would obviously put all of these questions to rest. So can you just elucidate why for 2016 the President can release his taxes? Why won't he do that and put all of these questions away, back up what you're saying, prove that what you're saying is correct? That's the way to do it.
As we've said many times before, the President's taxes are still under audit. And until that is completed, then we wouldn't move forward on putting his taxes out.
John, the why part of it, Sarah, and I don't mean to belabor it, but I understand that the President wants to wait until after the audit.
I don't think it's that complicated.
Why.
As long as they're under audit, he's not going to release his taxes. His taxes are under audit, so he's not going to release those taxes. John.
These questions direct. Thank you, Sarah.
I think we've addressed this a number of times. I'm not sure why answering it another time will make the answer any different. John?
I have 2 questions on Russia. First, the Kremlin has recently threatened Twitter with a complete shutdown throughout Russia if it continues to carry the Twitter account of what they call undesirables, notably the dissident Mikhail Khodorkovsky's Open Russia group. They've made a similar threat to YouTube recently. What's the administration's reaction when the Russian government wants to shut down American-run businesses bringing an expression of opinion to their country?
Certainly, generally speaking, we would not support a government shutting down American businesses, and I don't know why this would be different, but I'd have to look into the details on that specific action and request that they've made.
The other thing on Russia, Senator Rubio has introduced legislation to name the street in front of the Russian embassy here after the slain Russian dissident Boris Nemtsov. Senator Corker has blocked it. Does the administration have an opinion on this?
Not that I'm aware of. Nita?
I wanted to ask you about the path forward on the Export-Import Bank. Now that the Senate committee is saying that Scott Garrett's name shouldn't go forward, does the White House think that it needs to name someone else?
Look, we're going to work with the committee on a path forward that hasn't yet been determined. We're certainly very disappointed in the Senate Banking Committee missed an opportunity to get the export-import banking fully functioning again, and we're going to work with them to determine the next steps.
On his name or someone else?
More generally speaking, just a path forward. We'll let you know if it's going to be with that individual or a different plan. Brian?
Just a couple of quick follow-ups. First on Matthew, he was asking about Amtrak. There was a budget request, as I understand, from the President for $630 million reduction in the long-distance Amtrak routes. Because of the accident in Washington, do you plan on revisiting that issue? On Matthew Peterson, the 3 that were turned down, it's our understanding that they had close ties to the White House. So you're going to try to change the vetting process And then finally on the one on UFOs.
Let me start and do one at a time because
oh.
I'm not going to remember all of those questions. If we have to, we'll see if we can get to all of that. The first one was on judicial nominees.
Well, the first one is on the Amtrak.
This is why we didn't skip and let you take three.
Yeah.
So on Amtrak, as I told Matthew a few minutes ago, we're going to wait until that investigation is complete. There's a more thorough review, and we'll talk about next steps once that's done. In terms of the judicial nominees, I've walked through that a couple of times now. We have put through nominated 60 individuals. Only 3 have had to withdraw or not gone forward in some capacity, and that's pretty standard for any administration. Every administration ahead of us has had similar challenges where they've either withdrawn or not gone forward.
Their ties to the White House, because it's looked upon as those were friends of the White House, and that's why they got that nomination. Are you going to change the vetting process? Are you going to look at it more closely?
I think if we were so focused on friends that were close to the White House, those individuals would be moving forward and not having withdrawn. James.
Sarah, the new national security strategy specifically calls out Russia for using subversive tactics to interfere with the affairs of other countries. Why didn't the president use that kind of aggressive language in his speech yesterday?
Look, the president has weighed in on Russia and his feelings on that a number of times. The policy and the strategy put forth in that very detailed paper was that of the president, and it reflects his views. And, you know, he's didn't read every single page of it word for word. I'm sure you're all thankful for that because we certainly could have. Maybe I should do that for the next briefing. But look, the president's been clear what his position is. We've been tough on Russia. We've put sanctions on Russia. We've imported energy and impacted them in a big way. The president has not been soft in this process. He chose to focus on different things in the speech, but those things were included in the national security strategy because they're important and they're part of the administration's viewpoints. Jill?
Thanks, Sarah. 2 things. First, I just wanted to go back to the Scott Garrett issue. Does the president at this point regret having nominated someone who had advocated previously getting rid of the Export-Import Bank to leave it?
Not that I'm aware of. I'm going to take one last question.
I also just want to ask, I understand the president spoke with Prime Minister May today. Did they have any discussion at all about the president's planned visit? Have you settled on any timing for a potential visit?
That invitation has been extended and accepted, and we're working with them to finalize the details, which we expect to announce soon, and we'll keep you guys posted on that once that's finalized. Last question, Jim.
Yeah, the president did say that this tax cut bill would cost him a fortune. That was false, right?
No, because on the personal side, this actually could impact the president in a large way. And
how would balance out corporate versus personal if he's going to come out?
I'm not sure if he's done a side-by-side, but I know that there are a number of provisions that would negatively impact the president personally. And so we contend that those comments are still very consistent. However, like I've said, our focus has been on the middle class, and that is what we think is delivered in this tax package, and we very much look forward to seeing it passed later today and signed at a date soon, and we'll be sure to keep you guys posted on that. Thanks so much, guys.
Well, what's interesting about the House vote